Hi and welcome to my channel. Okay, tonight I've been looking at some of the research that I've been doing for my channel on this weight loss program that I'm on, and I've come across a little bit of information which I think is very interesting, which I'll share with you. First, I'll just do my stats as I normally do, and I'll talk about this little issue that I've come up against after that's finished. Back again. Okay, now I'll put my stats up first. I do see that my blood pressure is getting a wee bit low, so I'm going to have to keep an eye on that and maybe see if I need to get my medications reduced a wee bit on that. But I'll just monitor that over a few days. And then again, I've put my food plan in from yesterday. So that's all there, it's all fully explained. I'm still a bit short on some of the levels, like on the protein, which I need to get up. Fat is I'm at or just above the level that I should be for that. So I'll work on the carbs and the proteins. But in the meantime, as I say, I've put the stats up for yesterday, and we'll see how I go tomorrow. Okay, now this little issue that I want to talk about, it's not really an issue, it's just something I became aware of when I was just doing a lot of research, because I do watch a lot of videos on older people that have that have got videos, and those that are doing weight loss and have done weight loss and other issues that they talk about on their channels. Now, the one thing that really has hit home to me is there is a lot of older people now in the retired group that are on YouTube, that have got their own channels and doing very well. Well, I wouldn't say surprisingly, but they are doing very well. And then I realised that, they want to do something creative. A lot of them have worked in technology during their working lives. They're familiar with computers and programs and things like that, and unless you go out and seek something along those lines, once you retire, there's not really anything that you're confronted with on a daily basis, unless it's just the EFTPOS machine at the supermarket. So I can understand why so many older people now are taking on YouTube channels. And in this, I put myself in this, I guess, not forgetting that I'm in that older group as well. But I did notice that there are things that happen to people outside of my understanding of what it's like to be retired. So, and I see now that I think the reason that there's so many people on YouTube that are retired is, firstly, they've got the time. They've got the time to sit there and to make films and think about topics, and they've got the time on their hands. And what better way to do it than to be creative, creating content for YouTube and being entertaining, because no doubt they're getting entertainment as well from other people's YouTube channels. And I think that's a good reason why people are happy to subscribe to other channels. I've subscribed to a lot, and it's all different different angles that they're coming from. But I subscribe to them because I like to keep up and see how people are going with their channels. Their kids have all gone. Their kids are now got their own families, and so they've got grandkids as well. Some of them even got great-grandkids. I have. And, a lot of them, people are on their own or just husband and wife together, and they've just got so much time there. And this is a good way to fill in that time and to feel that they've got some sort of purpose. The other thing too is that they've got stories to tell. They've been around for years, but these days nobody seems to want to listen, or the situations don't arise where they can tell their stories. People don't families don't sit around in the lounge anymore, around the fire, and talk and have conversations about things, and the idea of sitting at the dinner table and telling stories and communicating with day-to-day things. It's gone. That time's past. If kids have to sit at the table these days, they're either on their phones or they can't wait to get down from the table so they can get into their room and onto their computers and onto their phones. So there's no situation now available for older people to be able to sit and relate their stories, their, things that they've done in the past. That situation just does not occur anymore, which is really quite sad. Now, I believe that the old people are like gemstones. These days we've got people, retiring at 65, maybe a bit later, and some are living to 100 and more. And whereas a gemstone will sit in the ground for thousands of years and develop, it's got its own story to tell, and it's bright and shiny when it's finally brought to the surface. Whereas with older people, they've got stories to tell as well. They've got a life that they've experienced, and they're not given the opportunity to bring it to the surface and to shine like a gemstone. And this is what I believe, that if you look at the content of a gemstone and all that history that it's got in it, you think the same as an older person and all the history that they've got. So I believe that my interpretation is I see older people, including myself, I see older people, I equate them to being like a gemstone. But a lot of them, unfortunately, aren't ever given the chance to reach the surface and to shine. The older generation they've had their productive years, right from when they were first educated as children. They grew up, they got married, they had families, they built a foundation, they built a home for their future generation, and they provided an environment to enable that generation to thrive. And ultimately, that generation move away, and the builder of that environment is sort of pushed into the background, and no one sort of pays any heed to it anymore. So they've had their role. People look at old people as if they're not even worth their place in society. And that's sad. I see so many people that as they get older, they're very lonely. Their family don't sort of see them. And now they sort of get cast aside. Everyone's too busy to spend time with them. Everyone's too busy to understand them. The grandkids think their grandies are too slow. Oh, no, we don't want to spend time with our grandparents. They just, what have they got to offer me, basically? Old people can be considered to be sort of a bit slow and not sort of be of any value to anybody. But they are. There's so much value there. They say that the younger generations say that old people don't understand us. They don't know what we're about. What do they know? They don't understand what we're going through. And every generation's the same, when they look at their parents and grandparents, they don't know what we're going through. Well, funny thing is that if you look back at the generations of people that are still alive today, firstly, we've got the greatest generation, which were people that were born sort of just after the turn of the 20th century up to about 1927. So they incorporated the First World War, and it was just prior to going into the Depression. And there are people alive today that are, approaching 100 and just over, and that are born in that generation. Following that, then, we've got the silent generation. That silent generation are the ones that have been through the Depression, and they went through the Second World War. They were from sort of like 1928 to 1945, and that's a lot of people are alive today that are still in that generation, that silent generation. They're our very elder citizens, but there are still a lot of people alive, and they've still got very, very active minds. Following that, of course, we've got the baby boomers. Now, baby boomers have been hit over the head for generations for causing all the problems of the world today. It wasn't our fault. We were just born. We just happened to be the product of the ending of the Second World War, when the soldiers come home and families were born, and it was a whole generation. It was an innocent generation as far as we were concerned. We had a fairly easy sort of childhood, and I say that meaning that a family could exist on dad's wages, and a lot of mums did stay home at that time. But as time went on, and then we start moving into the Gen Xers. Now, the Gen Xers, they were from about 1965 up to about 1980. My children, my kids are both Gen Xers. And when my kids were very young, I had to go out to, well, I went out to work because it was getting harder and harder to live on one income. So I went out and I worked, and that was from when I was in my, sort of like 30s, late 20s, early 30s. And so that became part of our life at that stage. And then following the Gen Xers, of course, we've got the millennials. They were born from sort of 81 to 1996. Now, that's a different generation altogether. The millennials just can't understand. I don't think they understand any generation, but that's their choice, I guess. But that's just another generation, and every generation's got its differences. And the thing is, with the millennials, you've got the introduction of computers, and that was a very exciting time in the workforce. It was exciting for kids because kids started to learn all about this technology, and that was something that was a huge change to life for every generation in that time. And then, of course, following the millennials, you've got from 1997 to 2012, you've got Gen Z. Now, Gen Zs have lived totally with computerization. They can't understand, I guess, they have trouble trying to understand what it's like being living without that. The generation that they were born into was very technologically advanced. You can see where there's been starting to come the split between family life and where technology has come into the home, and it's created an environment where young people can isolate themselves and not have to feel that they are mixing with other people, because they've sort of got their life all in front of them on that little screen that they sit and stare into. Of course, after the Gen Zs, you've got the Gen Alpha, which you've got Gen Alpha from 2013 up until like last year. And that generation has seen huge leaps and bounds in technology and in their education, in possibilities of what they can do for jobs as time goes by. And now, this year, 2025, they say we've got a new generation, which is called Generation Beta. Now, Generation Beta, who knows what they're going to have to endure from now until the next 10, 12, 14 years. But I can guess that AI will have a huge impact on that. So when your grandkids and other people sort of look at you and say, you don't know anything, you don't know what it's like. We know what it's like. We've been there, we've lived those generations. And if they would just take time, and if the world would slow down a wee bit and start tapping into some of the stories that some of these old people have got. And as I say, I've seen them. I see them on YouTube. It's part, as I say, it's part of my research that I've been doing through this weight loss program, and the amazing stories that people have got to tell. And it makes you laugh. You think, really? Was it really like that? And you remember your own situations. I do have to say, though, that there are a lot of situations where now the older people are being pushed aside, being worthless. I hate to see it where you've got estranged parents from their children and their grandchildren. It's really quite sad, because there's so much knowledge that is being just sent off into the ether and not being acknowledged or being harnessed. I still think, I remember the times I used to sit here with my mum, and she would tell me stories about her parents. Her parents came to New Zealand just before she was born in 1929. And she tells me what life was like after the war, and just, you know, the stories that she tells me over the years. Sometimes I could remember events happening, but I didn't understand the significance of them. It was lovely to hear those stories from her point of view, rather than this just event that happened in my life, which didn't really have any significance. But to hear it from her point of view and her generation's point of view, it shed a whole new light on different things that happened in history. And I truly believe that if more people listen to our old folks, some of the stories, and okay, some people are getting a bit slow and maybe their memories aren't quite as good as they used to be, but there's such a wealth of information, so many good stories. And I'm so pleased to see now that so much of it's being documented on YouTube, because once those people are no longer here, their stories aren't going to die with them. Their stories are still going to be here. And I think that's very important. And so I encourage anybody who is, you know, in that retired and the same, you know, retired like I am, and decide to start up a YouTube channel and document things for future generations, because those recordings are going to be here forever. Well, as long as technology stays as it is. Hopefully the stories will be around, whereas the only way stories were recorded back, you know, centuries ago were by books and things like that. So hopefully now people will understand that the old folks that have got those YouTube channels, that have got so many great stories to tell, are just an absolute gem. So I just encourage people to listen, just to look for some of them and get to know the personalities of those people. I won't say any, you know, that I particularly watch, but they're easy to find. Some of them are just wonderful. So that's my little tip for the day. So from here, tomorrow I've got another topic that I'm going to talk about. And this has also come out of, let me just have a look at my notes here so I can see. Yeah, this has also come out of my researching my YouTube, you know, information for my YouTube channel. So I've got another topic to talk about tomorrow. So I hope you're going to come back and watch. And if you'd like to subscribe or like this video, I would be most delighted. And in the meantime, I will say take care, stay safe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.